The Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an unprecedented assault on Israel on 7th of October 2023, with hundreds of gunmen infiltrating communities near the Gaza Strip. About 1,200 people were killed and more than 250 were taken to Gaza as hostages, according to Israeli tallies. More than 33,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed in air and artillery strikes carried out by Israeli militants in response, Gaza's Hamas run minister says. What was Israel before 1948? Britain took control of the area known as Palestine following the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, which ruled the part of the Middle East in World War I. The land was inhabited by Jewish minority and Arab majority, as well as other small ethnic groups. Tensions between two peoples grew when the international community gave the UK the task of establishing a national home in Palestine for Jewish people. This stemmed from the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a pledge made by the Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Britain's Jewish community. The declaration was enshrined in the British mandate over Palestine and endorsed by the newly created League of Nations, forerunner of United Nations in 1922. To Jewish, Palestine was their ancestral home, but Palestinian Arabs also claimed the land and opposed the move. Between 1920s and 1940s, the number of Jews arriving there grew, with many fleeing from persecutions in Europe, especially the Nazi Holocaust in World War II. Violence between Jews and Arabs and against British rule also increased. In 1947, the UN voted the Palestine to be split into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem becoming an international city. That plan was accepted by Jewish leaders but rejected by Arab side and never implemented. In 1948, unable to solve the problem, Britain withdrew and Jewish leaders declared the creation of State of Israel. It was intended to be a safe haven for Jews fleeing persecution as well as the national homeland for Jews. Fighting between Jewish and Arab militants had been intensifying for months. The day after Israel declared statehood, 5 Arab countries attacked. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled and were forced to move out of their homes in what they called Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. By the time the fighting ended in the ceasefires, the following year, Israel controlled most of the territory. Jordan occupied land which became as the West Bank, Egypt and occupied Gaza. Jerusalem was divided between Israeli forces in west and Jordanian forces in the east. Because there was never a peace agreement, there was more wars and fightings in the following decades. In a war in 1967, Israel occupied East Jerusalem and West Bank, as well as most of the Syrian Golan Heights, Gaza, and Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. Most Palestinian refugees and their descendants live in Gaza and the West Bank, as well as in the neighboring Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Neither they were nor descendants have been followed by Israel to return to their homes. Israel says they would overwhelm the country and threaten its existence as a Jewish state. Israel still occupies the West Bank and claims the whole Jerusalem as its capital, while the Palestinians claim East Jerusalem as the capital of hope for future Palestinian state. The US is only one handful of countries to recognize the city as Israel's capital. In the past 50 years, Israel has been built settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, where more than 700,000 Jews now live. Settlements are held to illegal under international law. This is position of UN Security Council and UK government amongst theirs, although Israel rejects this. What is the Gaza Strip? Gaza is a narrow strip of land sandwiched between Israel and Mediterranean Sea, but with a short southern border with Egypt. Just 41 km long and 41 km wide, it was more than 2 billion inhabitants and is one of the most densely populated places on earth. In the wake of 1948-49 war, Gaza was occupied by Egypt for 19 years. Israel occupied Gaza in 1967 war stayed until 2005, during the time building Jewish settlements. Israel withdrew their troops and settlers in 2005, though it retained the control over airspace, sea border, and shoreline. The UN still considered the territory to be occupied by Israel. So, what are the problems between these two countries, Israelis and Palestinians? There are a number of issues which two sides can't agree on. So, some of them are what should happen to Palestinian refugees, whether Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank should stay or to be removed, whether the two sides should share the Jerusalem, and perhaps the most tricky of them all is whether Palestinian state should be created alongside Israel. So what efforts have been made to resolve the problems? Israel-Palestinian peace talks has held on and off between 1990s and 2010s, interspersed with outbreaks of violence. A negotiated peace did seem possible in the early days. A series of secret talks in Norway became the Oslo peace process, forever symbolized by a ceremony on the White House lawn in 1993. In a historic moment, the Palestinians recognized the state of Israel and Israel recognized its historical enemy, the Palestine Liberal Organization, as the sole representative of Palestinian people. Cracks soon appeared though, with the opposition leader, Oslo a model threat to Israel. The Israelis accelerated their project to settle Jews in the occupied Palestinian territories. The recently emerged Palestinian militant groups Hamas sent suicide bombers to kill people in Israel and wrecks the chances of a deal. The atmosphere in Israel turned ugly, culminated in Israeli Prime Minister assassination by Jewish extremists in 4th of November 1995. In the 2000s, attempts was made to revive the peace process following the 2003 when a roadmap was devised by the world powers with the ultimate goal of a two-state solution, but this was never implemented. Peace efforts finally stalled in 2014 when talks failed between Israelis and Palestinians in Washington. The most recent peace plan prepared by US when Donald Trump was president was also called Deal of the Century by Prime Minister and was also dismissed by the Palestinians as one-sided and never got off the ground. Why was Israel and Gaza at war now? Gaza is ruled by Hamas, an Islamist group which is committed by destruction of Israel and is designated as terrorist group by UK and many other countries. Hamas won the Palestinians' last election in 2006 and seized control of Gaza the following year by ousting the rival Fatah movement of West Bank-based President Mahmoud Abbas. Since then, militants in Gaza have fought several wars with Israel, which along with Egypt has maintained a partial blockade in the Strip to isolate Hamas and try to stop attacks, particularly indiscriminate firing rockets towards Israeli cities. Palestinians in Gaza say Israel's restriction and its airstrikes in heavily populated areas amount to collective punishment. This year has been the deadliest on record for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem, the UN says. Palestinians also complain of the restriction and military actions being carried out in the response to deadly attacks in Israelis. The tensions could have been the reason for Hamas' latest attack, but the militants may also have been seeking to boost their popularity among the ordinary Palestinians, including by using hostages to pressure Israel to free some of the estimated 4,500 Palestinians held in their prison. In the conclusion, we all hope all this ends on peace. We all have right to live in sanity and joy. My heartfelt condolences to all the victims and their families out there who lost their loved ones. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening.